Everyone, I'm Alex Pfeiffer, composer, musician, and a member of Musimagem. Today, we have the great pleasure to talk about John Lunn's music and career. For this talk, I will have with me João Batista, composer, writer, and director, and also a member of Musimagem, and of course, our special guest, John Lunn. Thank you, John, for being here with us. It's a great pleasure.
Well, it's a great pleasure for me. Hi, everyone.
So, I'll talk a little bit about John Lunn's career and life. John Lunn was born in Glasgow in the United Kingdom. He graduated from Glasgow University and was a member of the musical ensemble Man Jumping, where he played keyboard and bass in the early 80s. He started to compose for BBC productions in the late 80s, starting a very long career that included almost 100 movies and series, like The White King, The Last Kingdom, Belgravia, and the renowned production Downton Abbey, for which he won 2 Emmy Awards. John Lunn is also a successful concert music composer. He has written several operas and a violin concerto. So, John, it seems that you had a lot of music going on at your home when you were young, and your father played the saxophone, right?
Correct. Yeah.
And can you tell us how your relation with music started and when you decided to follow music as a profession?
Well, it was really quite late. There was a lot of music in the house when I was growing up because my father had been a sax player in a jazz band, but he was no longer doing that professionally when I was born. But he was a massive jazz fan, and he introduced me to Miles Davis when I was maybe about 10. And I was beginning to get really interested in music. And also there was this, it was the late 60s. I was beginning to get into things like Jimi Hendrix and Pink Floyd, but my mother was also into classical music, so there was a lot of Bach in the house as well. And by the age of 12, I was becoming so obsessed with music that I just had to start, playing an instrument. So I went along to school, and I wanted to play the cello for some reason.
Right.
But they had no vacancies for cello, but they did have one for double bass, which was actually brilliant because at 12, it's quite late to start an instrument, but it's a good time to start the double bass, because of the sheer size of it.
Yeah.
And also in Scotland where I was living and being brought up, it was quite a small village, although there was a lot going on in the, around. There were very few bass players. So very suddenly, I was asked to do just about everything. And, and to begin with, I could barely play. But,
yeah.
But to avoid embarrassment, I had to become really good very, very quickly.
Right.
And I just really, really took to it, and then by the time I started the piano. And then by the time I was 16, I was so obsessed with music. There was no question, I was not going to be a musician. I just didn't know then that I was going to be a composer. That kind of arrived slightly later, really. But yes, sorry, I took a long time to get there, but
no, great answer. And João, do you have a question?
Yes, and the movies. How you start your relationship with the movies, with music for movies?
So that took quite a while, Zhao. So I went to university to study music because I wanted. By the time I was 18, I was more interested in how music was put together rather than going to learn how to play the piano or the double bass. So and by the time I left university, they'd turned me into a composer. I still hadn't thought about film at all. So I was writing for orchestras, but I was also in pop music as well. And I got our songwriting contract with a publishing company called Chrysalis in London. And so that brought me down to London. And then I played in various bands. Plus, I was also doing and performing with contemporary music ensembles. And then I ended up, say, when I was about 27 or 28, working with contemporary dance ensembles, not ballet, but contemporary dance. And I was both a member of their orchestra, which was quite small, and then I ended up writing music for contemporary dance that had, so it had a real story element to it, but the storyline was actually quite oblique in contemporary dance. But I really took to the concept of writing music that had that was required to tell a story, and from there it was just one easy move into film and TV. I made up a demo cassette, that's how old I am, and sent it to a couple of producers, some people that I'd known from Scotland, and I got a job. I almost immediately. But I didn't do my first film until I was probably 30. But I'd had a good 10 years of doing every conceivable style of music that was going from contemporary classical to pop music to jazz, because that's kind of required these days. You are meant to be able to cover a variety of styles, and so I got into it, I think, at a good age. But I was 30 years old before I did my first film.
Oh, okay. And when you're composing music for a movie or a series, what is your creative process? Do you compose straight in your DAW? Do you go to the piano? How does it work?
I usually go straight to the DAW because I like to work to the picture itself.
Right.
I mean, occasionally I'll maybe sit down at the piano, but I think when I write without the picture in front of me, I tend to write music which is too complicated, and I need to see it, the picture, to see
Right.
how, if
The
it's working.
movements, right?
Yeah. It's just, I just need, and so much of what I do is about the way that it moves, from scene to scene, especially in something like Downton Abbey, and then it has to fit under a lot of dialogue. So I can really only do that by working, straight to the picture.
All right. And about Downton Abbey, can you tell us a little bit how was the process of composing and how did it work for you? It was easy, it was hard, how was it?
It was, I mean, to begin with, I mean, we had no idea how famous it was going to be. I mean, I
Great.
thought it would be really good,
Mhm.
but we had no idea. And I think the very first cue, I think I had 3 attempts at, and the third attempt was it.
Oh, okay.
And it was basically the main kind of theme, or all the elements of the main theme were all sort of in there. I mean, there were but because it was set in England in 1912, I did listen to a lot of music of that period, but it was just, the music was too overwrought, and it needed to be simpler. So
Right.
I did look at Philip Glass, and there's a very small element of Philip Glass in there, but actually, if you look at the underlying harmony of that first piece in Downton Abbey, it's, the harmony is much more like a pop song. It's much more like Coldplay.
Yes.
It kind of goes F major, A minor, F major, A minor, F major, and then G major over F. That dominant third, dominant seventh third inversion.
Mhm.
Followed by, all those elements kind of just came together
Right.
in the very, very first scene.
Right.
And And then also, if you don't know if you remember, but there was a train. It started off with a train,
Yes.
and
Yes.
so it was capturing the energy of the train,
Yeah, the
and
string pattern, it's totally
that came from
the
the train.
movement, right?
Yeah. And then it cut to a picture of Bates looking forlornly, looking out of the window,
Hmm.
quite alone. And I picked out the solo piano tune
Yeah.
for him. And then it cut to the telegraph poles, which was carrying the information that the heir to Downton Abbey had
Hmm.
drowned on the Titanic. But of course, the audience don't know any of this at all, So
Yeah.
the music's trying to, and give a sense of importance to the telegraph poles,
Hmm.
that this is something meaningful that's going to happen.
Yeah.
And then you eventually land a beautiful picture of Downton Abbey itself, Highclere Castle, and that's when the harmony moved out into that, the dominant seventh third inversion, which I always think of as a really sort of pompous chord. It's a kind of, royalty, and I don't know why, but it just does. And all those elements, like four elements, really worked for the entire series. All four of those could work together or separately,
Yeah.
and everybody loved it as soon as I'd done it. And
Yeah,
then it
it's
worked.
really,
It
really
worked
beautiful.
later on in the show, in quite a few places as well. So then, there was no title sequence in the first episode. So
Hmm.
in the episode 2, they asked me to do a 30-second version of that theme, which I did, and then they put the pictures to the music.
Right.
The one that starts with the dog's bottom and then dusting the chandelier. I think if I'd been given those pictures to write to, I'd have written something completely different.
Right.
It's amazing because the pictures don't really show you what you're about to see, whereas the music's really doing everything.
Yeah.
It's
And
doing
and
all the work.
and and the
And
first scene, there is no dialogue, right? Almost no
no
dialogue. So
dialogue for 10 minutes.
yeah, and it's
You know,
impressive how the music just like brings you to that context, to the emotions.
exactly.
It's
Yeah,
amazing, amazing.
yeah, yeah. But of course, we had no idea how big it was going to be.
Right.
Took us all by surprise.
A good surprise.
It was a great surprise.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
About Downton Abbey, how is the experience of make soundtracks for a so long series,
Oh.
6 seasons, two features movies? This take a, a big time, a, a long time in your life, in your work. How you deal with a so long, so beautiful work with the older jobs, the older points of your career.
Yeah, so I think it's when we were doing the TV series, it kind of took up about for me we would take up about 4 months of the year. So, or maybe 5 months. And then the rest of the time I would do, other jobs. But I'd had we got off to such a good start on season 1 of Downton Abbey that coming back to it was really quite a joy, because a lot of the material we knew was going to work. I mean, some of the material from season 1, it still appears in the last movie, which is from like nearly 12 years ago. So I think the material that I did write for season 1, I felt was really, really strong. And and it kind of holds up all the way through the show. But then each episode, you know, had a different storyline that needed music expanding. But because there was a bulk of music that existed that I could rely on, it was quite joyful to come back to, you know, every time, because I knew I was in a good place, and I didn't have to panic about it. So it was always, I always felt comfortable, you know, musically in that world. And the other good thing about Downton, and I can't stress this enough, was there's so few people making the decisions. There was a, you know, basically an executive producer and a producer and me. So the three of us were making all the music, you know, decisions together. So that was really good. And we had worked together before, so we had a kind of common language, you know, a way of talking about music. So we didn't have to spend a lot of time you know, worrying about it and trying to get, you know, agreement amongst everybody. We were always pretty much in agreement right from the word go about the music. And also I didn't talk to any directors at all.
Really?
It was just me, a showrunner, and a producer. Because as a showrunner would say, he says, well, because the directors come in for like maybe 2 or 3 episodes, you know, and then they're off. And so he would say, well, you know much more about the way the music works in the show than they do, you know. Why complicate things, you know, by getting them involved?
Of course.
So that made it a really, you know, sort of joyful, you know, experience as well. And that's carried on into the movies. The first movie, I did talk to the director, and the movie's kind of slightly different because we've got more time and it's just one director. So I did talk with the director, was very heavily involved in the first movie, but he'd been on the TV series, so he kind of knew how the music worked as well. Anyway, and then on the second movie, I'd worked with the director on a completely different project before, so we kind of slotted into place quite quickly as well. So yeah, it's partly, a lot of it is down to that, you know. There's not 20 executives all having a different, you know, idea about how the music works.
Yeah, I believe that's much more easy to work with few people, right?
It's so much easier. Yeah.
I believe we can watch a scene. What do you think?
Yeah, well, maybe we could show. I mean, I'll show you. I've got a couple of clips from the last movie. Maybe show the first one, Kinema. Because
1 second.
There were two kind of sort of main things. Yeah, that's the one. Sure. Yeah. So I'll just say a bit about it beforehand. So there were in the last movie, there were two kind of storylines I really needed to adapt to. And one was this idea that this silent movie was going to be made in Downton Abbey, you know, plus there was the arrival of these kind of glamorous sort of film stars. So I had to kind of go between, but I still had to make it sound a bit like, you know, Downton Abbey, but I had to make it kind of music, kind of like more of the period, and this is kind of also harkening back to the early days of movies as well, as trying to tell the story. So it's quite complicated, but I was really pleased.
Challenge.
Yeah, exactly, Alex.
Okay.
Sentimental to me.
No, that's perfect. Mr. Rummelsley. Why are you here?
You know, I'm thinking of films.
Well, I know you enjoy a trip to the pictures.
It's more than that. For me, Hollywood is the ultimate dream factory. And I need dreams as much as the next man.
I'll give you Miss Dalglish's wardrobe.
I know, but
You could probably stop it there, Zhao. Yeah, so you can see there's quite a lot going on, you know, in that scene that the music's kind of got to cover. But somehow I'm not quite sure why, but it still sounds a bit like Downton, you know, as well. It's got there's a kind of slight tongue in cheek as well, you know, kind of you know, feeling going on there.
Yeah, great job. Really beautiful music, and it's interesting how the orchestration helps, like with the scene, right? Then you start with horns, and then when she comes, there is the strings, the beautiful. The movements when she's walking, the music is totally together.
So you know, it's really carefully molded to what you see. You know, it's not just a question of writing a good tune. It's much more about, you know, the flow of the picture.
And you did both great tune and
flowing. Well, that's the idea. I mean, you know, if you can get a great tune as well, but really the thing is about flowing, you know, it's about the storytelling, you know. Because, you know, without the I mean, she looks great when she comes out, but really, you know, the music is giving her a, you know, grandeur.
Acho que ficou com você ontem, né?
Sorry, we're having some sound issues. I think it's okay now.
But yeah, you can see that again, the music is doing a lot of work.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah. And to get the pace and the mood, right? Musically.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
And you also, in one interview, you said that the music is always about relationships, right?
Yes. Yeah. Rather than, you know, individual characters, the music is it's much more about the relationships between people, and in some ways it works like a kind of shorthand, because people, especially in a long-running TV series, less so in a film, but in a long-running TV series, people might miss an episode,
right?
You know, so the music's kind of it's kind of foreshadowing kind of what the relationship is like between people. It kind of works like a shorthand to sort of explain, you know, what, in case somebody kind of missed anything. It's very much, you know, about that. So there is an awful lot of storytelling going on, you know, in the music, you know, underneath the dialogue. So yeah, but I've always, apart from the house itself, the house itself has had its own tune, kind of. But the tunes are about the relationships between people rather than individual people.
And you also help the audience to understand what's going on quickly, right, with music.
Exactly. Yeah. Because it's actually quite fastly edited, Downton Abbey.
Yes.
You know, quickly from one thing, you know, to another, kind of constantly.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of storylines going on, particularly in the TV series. You know, there's sometimes it can be as many as like 6 or 7 storylines going through an entire series.
Yeah.
You know?
Right.
John, about Brazilian music, do you like? Do you know?
Yeah, I do. I do really like, you know, Brazilian music. I got really into Milton Nascimento for a while. In fact, I went to see him live in Glasgow, here in Glasgow, actually.
Oh, that's great.
Just down the road.
Wow.
I got introduced to him through there was a brilliant album he did with Wayne Shorter and Herbie Hancock, which I got really into. But then started following him, you know, in his own right as well. And then also I'm a big fan of Caetano Veloso as well. So yeah, I mean, unfortunately, I haven't had much opportunity to. In fact, it's one of the few musical styles. Well, what is Brazilian music style? Well, I mean, what you know? I mean, there are so many, some different ones, but unfortunately, it's the one area I've never been asked to do. I'm going to have to do something.
Yeah, please.
Yeah.
We want to
Yeah.
listen. So, John, it seems that the orchestras around the world are getting more and more interested in playing film music. Your music, for example, has been played all over the world. Here in Brazil, we had it a couple of times. We'll have it tomorrow with a chamber orchestra.
Yeah.
Sorry, today at night we'll have the concert with a chamber orchestra. They'll play Downton Abbey music. Hope you can watch it. It'll be online too. And
Right. Oh, yeah. Right. What time will that? Oh, yeah. I probably will be able to watch it. Yeah. Great. Right.
yeah.
Yeah.
And the question is, like, we have in the academy composers that think film music it's kind of smaller than concert music, and you do both concert music and film music. So what's your opinion about it, this relationship between concert music and film music?
Yeah. I'm you know, I'm kind of in two minds about it because you know, it just so happens, I think it's lucky for the music for Downton Abbey, which is kind of sort of tune based, does lend itself to a concert
Right.
performance. But you know, there are lots of other scores I've done which I really like, which wouldn't work, you know, in a concert performance because they're so particular to the movie, you know. And I
Okay.
think of them, and I think of the movie and the music kind of as one thing, and without either one, you know, neither work.
Right.
So, and also a lot of what I do, yes, I use orchestras, you know, all the time, but I also use a lot of electronics.
Yes.
You know, which was so I like the process of being in a record. I regard film music as being something that you do in the recording studio.
Oh, okay.
You know, and it's mixed, you know, in a different way than you'd probably do for a classical album, and you know, and I combine it with a lot of electronics as well. And there's sometimes, you know, there's manipulation of the orchestra as well. So I enjoy doing these concerts.
Right.
But I think they're just a little, you know, sort of added extra. I mean, for instance, we're thinking of trying to do the music from The Last Kingdom live next year.
Oh, great.
Yeah, but you know, well, you say great, but you know, so much of it, you know, so much of it is done in the studio, you know, using
Right.
analog synths, that the idea, you know, of taking it on the road, you know, and the setup that we'd need to do it is kind of, well, I'm it's so daunting that I haven't even put my mind to it yet.
Yeah.
But there's lots of talk about it, and it would be great. And the singer that well, the two of us do it together. Ivor,
Right?
yeah, she's utterly amazing, and she looks,
Yeah.
yeah, and she looks fantastic, you know, and she looks like a Viking as well, you know. Whereas,
Yeah, you're
you know,
right.
you know, me on stage, I do not look like a Viking, you know. So, but I think it would be good fun, a good thing to try and do. But again, the thing about the Last Kingdom music is that Ivor and I have worked on the soundtrack together. The soundtrack albums that we do are not taken directly from the film. We take the material and then we work them into songs. So that works live, that would work live,
Yes.
But
yes.
But there are lots of things I've done that I just, that wouldn't work live in a concert hall, I think.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
so it's an interesting area, and there's no doubt that in Europe it's become very, very popular, as a concept.
Yeah. I think all over the world, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. And you also said that it's coming a movie for the Last Kingdom, right?
Yeah, literally just finished it 2 days ago. Yep, there's a 2 hour movie and it really will be the last of the Last Kingdom. It is the story does get killed off, and yeah, it's really good. It's amazing, and Ivor and I have spent a long time on it. There's a lot of music. Well, there's always a lot of music in the show.
Right.
And then next week and the week after, we're getting together again. We're producing another soundtrack album, which will be finished in another couple of weeks. Again, we've spent a long time on this as well. So and I'm really pleased with this one. I think it's the best thing. I think it's the best thing I've done, actually.
Oh.
So yeah.
Amazing.
Yeah.
Yes.
So I'm really happy with it.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to watch it.
It's really good. Yeah. Very powerful.
When it's going to be released? Do you have an idea?
I don't. I mean, I'd imagine since we've only just finished the music, I can't see it going out before Christmas because it just won't be ready on time. I would March maybe, probably. I think it will be available on Netflix.
Okay, so
John, by the way, about concert music, today at 8 p.m. Brazilian time, a string orchestra, a very good string orchestra, Sinfonietta, will play the music, the themes of Downton Abbey and the Right King.
Oh my God! All right. Oh, brilliant, Joe.
I wish that you watch it. They will play the music of the guests of this year. Your music, Rachel Portman, David Mansfield, Christopher Gordon, and the Brazilian guests, including Nivaldo Ornelas and Túlio Mourão, that started their career in the same group of Milton Nascimento.
Oh my God!
The Corner Club in Belo Horizonte.
Right. Yeah.
Today, live in São Paulo, in the Santa Marcelina University, and online in the same time.
So it's 8 o'clock Brazilian time.
8 o'clock, yes.
So that should be 11 o'clock.
Yes, I think so.
Well, I'll be back home by then, so that should be fine. Yeah.
Oh, great. So we have some questions from the audience. I have one in here. I will try to translate it. So how is the issue of copyrights in England and Europe, and how do you control your works in this context of copyrights?
Yeah. So it's a very important issue. I never get 100% of everything. I have to negotiate with the company, but I get a substantial amount of the publishing, I retain. There obviously so publishing, particularly on something like Downton Abbey, is worth a lot to me, and it's fine. There are obviously some countries where, for instance, Downton Abbey is really popular in China, but there's no copyright law, so I don't receive a penny.
Oh,
Yeah, and the same from Russia. So that's a bit of an issue. I don't know how you get around that. But I've got a good publishing deal. My publisher, looks after. He'll have publishing side deals all over the world. So we do have quite a lot of control. But I'm at a stage, and I would advise this to anybody, was don't give up your publishing. Try and keep as much of it as possible, because you never know what's going to happen or how it's going to be used. And in Britain there are laws. Luckily, you can't really do a buyout. It's kind of illegal, really.
Yes.
For your publishing, you've got to maintain at least 50% of it. And in general, most of the companies that I work for will, do adhere to that. So yeah, but it's a tricky issue.
Yeah, for everybody. And another question here, we have a lot of students, film scoring students watching us right now. So what is the one best piece of advice you want to give to a composer that wants to start working in this business of film score?
Oh, I'd say, don't get started too early. You need a lot of experience of different music. I think personally, I mean, is it just because that's the way it's happened to me? I just think I think you need an experience of putting together a lot of music. I think the concept of going to university, studying film composition, and then expecting to make a film, a career in film from the age of 23, 24, I think is unrealistic.
Yes.
So I would say, do as much different music as you possibly can in different, scenarios. I studied music at university, but to be honest, I learned an incredible amount by being in a band.
Right.
And working with other people and other musicians, and because film is a really collaborative process.
Yes.
Oh, it's not like modern classical music where you're stuck away in a turret on your own and writing down things and it's much more collaborative. And I think that's what's really good about a band, being in a band.
Mm-hmm. You depend on the people, right?
Yeah. So yeah, don't get too despondent too early.
Right. Don't rush things up.
Don't rush things. Yeah.
Yeah. And about The Last Kingdom, I think we have another video clip, right? We were talking about it.
Yeah.
If I'm not mistaken.
It was the reason I showed this was because it was kind of an amazing moment. It was the end of the last season, which was, to be honest, we at one point we thought this might be the final thing of The Last Kingdom. I think we were still in debate whether we were going to do the 2-hour movie or not. So at one point we thought this was going to be the last thing, and in the final episode they did this amazing thing which I've never seen in a series before. Was they had 3 minutes at the end which was just going to be music, and it was going to be highlights of the previous 5 seasons, just to remind everybody of all the things that had happened.
Oh, that's great.
Yeah, and they just left it up to us. There's no dialogue. It's just all music.
That's rare.
it's so rare. I mean, it took me by surprise when I first saw it. I thought, oh my God, they've given us this, it's almost like a music video in a way, which is but the music itself does come very much, from the show, but it was a particularly good one to work on, and Ivor is absolutely stunning in it. Yeah.
Amazing singer. So, João, can you put the clip? Wow, outstanding.
It's pretty. I mean, she is stunning. I can't say more about her. She's just amazing, and she's been so good to work with, so easy as well, and she's learned so much about about working to picture, because when I first started working with her, she hadn't really done anything like that before, but she really took to it. I mean, one of the big problems about that piece is that they used it to temp the end of the movie with, right? And that, but of course we couldn't use it because we can't end the movie the same way we ended series 5. So we had to write another piece as epic as that. I think we've managed it, but it was a bit of work, I have to say. Yeah,
really beautiful. And it's really important, the musicians that you choose for a film score, how important that is as a composer, right?
Yeah, I mean, this is a peculiar one in that really there's only really 3 of us that do everything. Me, I got a brilliant assistant now, Danny Saul, who I brought in to help me with the technical aspect of it, because most of that music is not done it's done in Pro Tools. It's audio. It's not done. We hardly use any computer instruments. It's mainly all analog. There's a lot of Eurorack modules, a lot of real synths.
Oh, okay.
Most of that's all played in.
Oh.
It's all audio. It's not computerized.
Yeah, it's really organic.
Yeah, that's why. And so and then Ivor, of course, who's like an orchestra in her own right. But it's the 3 of us that do the everything, really.
Wow.
Yeah,
that's amazing.
Wonderful. John, you did the soundtrack for some good movies and for a lot of series, many series. Do you prefer series, or the series prefer you?
I think the series prefers me, actually, Joe. I mean, to me, there's not that much difference between film and TV in the way that I work. The reason I got involved in more TV series was about 15 years ago. The British film industry was in relatively good health, but it was a little bit frustrating in that the budgets for movies, sometimes weren't that great. And actually, I discovered that the budgets for series, particularly if you were working for the BBC, were really good. And not only that, you did get to, you kept for instance, I've got royalties from America for Downton Abbey that I wouldn't have done if it was a movie. So it was partly financial and partly, actually, I quite like doing, you get 10 hours. In the last game, you get 10 hours to explore your material, in a season. I quite like that sort of challenge. So it's a good question. Does the series choose me, or I choose the series? It's a bit of both, I think, Joe. Yeah.
John, once you said that you need to be carried away by the music that you compose as a composer. So could you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah. So if you're expecting an audience to sort of cry, for instance, then I think you have to have got pretty close to that yourself while you're working on the scene, at some point. Otherwise, how do you know, if it's working? And I do like to play my way through a scene, from the beginning to the end, so that I just know that even if it's very raw and I'm play wrong notes and I play the wrong chord or something by accident, but I always feel as if I need to play my way through it to get the flow of it, and then I can make mistakes, and then I can go back and correct them, and and reorchestrate it and stuff like that. But at some point, I'll have played my way through that, and and being moved, by doing it. And if I haven't, then I'm not sure how I could expect other people to be moved, really.
Yeah, that makes sense. It's about your emotion, right?
Absolutely. Yeah. Yep. And a lot of what you do as a composer is this difference between working in the concert hall and working to the movie is you're kind of it's so much of what you do is kind of psychological, because you've got to understand what's going on in the movie and what your job is, what are you trying to tell the audience, and also what are you trying to tell the audience that they can't already see. The music is really at its best, it's like a subtext, that's telling you, is showing you things that are going on that you might not be aware of without it, or highlighting specific things that that aren't there. So it's a complicated job. It's more complicated than just writing a tune.
and to find the right moods, right, the right chords.
Yeah, I mean, you could be the most gifted musician in the world, but do you understand what the hell's going on in the scene? You know what I mean? It's so that's hugely important.
Right. And about the projects that you're working on right now, could you tell us a little bit about it?
Yeah, so I've just finished the Last Kingdom, and then before Christmas, I'm really concentrating on the soundtrack album of that with Ivor. And then after Christmas, I'm doing another series called Shetland. I don't know if you get that there. It's hugely popular here in America. It's like a detective thing, but it's set in the very far north of Scotland.
Oh, okay.
And then I'm doing, there's another series of Belgravia.
Oh, great.
Yeah, which I didn't think, I thought, I mean, it came out in the pandemic and here, and it did really well, but I wasn't really sure whether, but anyway, they've decided to, carry on with it. So then I'll be doing that. And then it's not definite yet, but it's pretty likely I'll be doing another Downton Abbey movie, towards the end of the year.
Amazing.
So yeah. So that's it so far.
All right. I have some questions from our audience. Let me try here. I'll have to translate. It's in Portuguese. Just a minute. So when you use the images really intensely when you're composing to inspire you, and can you rationalize the decisions that you take with the music when you're composed, like the tonality, the modes, the harmony? That's the question. About the creative process.
Yeah. So I mean, the harmony is hugely important. It kind of defines, everything, I'll do for a whole series. For Downton Abbey is full. It's got lots of sevenths in it, and and the major sevenths, and and use a lot of minor six chords, and it's quite a kind of sort of jazz. It's not exactly jazz, but there's a bit of a jazz harmony in there, and there's also much more kind of popular music as well. But someone coming at somewhere like The Last Kingdom, the music's not of the period, because, well, nobody knows what it was like in the 9th century.
Yeah.
And anyway, it's not my job to make you sound like we're in the 9th century. That's the art department's job,
Yeah.
not mine. And so, but there are certain things you can and cannot do. So there's lots of force in The Last Kingdom, and there's not that, you'd never get a seventh. That would just be too, in fact, and quite often, Danny, my assistant, will try and put in kind of sort of, odd notes occasionally. And I said, no, Danny, that's we're not in the 19th century, kind of, it's, so it's very bare, the Last Kingdom. There's a lot of drones going on as well, kind of, but then there's a lot of discord. But we create tension in The Last Kingdom by using a lot of really weird sounds that are not in any tonality whatsoever.
Right.
And there's a lot of weird stuff going on. There's a lot of heavily detuned things as well, kind of, and that creates a lot of tension. And then we build that around a lot of fifths. So it's it is massively important, the harmony, for a thing. And there are I definitely make rules for myself, in terms of harmony.
Right.
For instance, in Downton Abbey, there's very few straight major or minor chords. They're almost always something. There's almost always a 9th or an 11th, or or a 13th going on, because it can take it, that kind of that level of kind of glamour kind of can definitely take it.
Yeah, I believe it's a balance between the rational part and the inspiration. That balance is work, right?
Yeah.
João, do you have more questions?
Which the more challenge soundtrack that you make?
In terms of what, Joe? What in terms
the creation, the orchestration, the more challenging?
Yeah, I think it's all, I mean, but starting a completely new job, a completely new project, is always a bit of a challenge, because you need to define it, and I find that quite hard work, getting a foothold and actually defining what is the element of the show, and particularly in a series, episode 1 is massively important. If you don't get that right, it leads to problems all the way down the line. So I always ask for as much time as possible on episode 1, and then I don't really care after that. I can work pretty quickly, as long as I really know what I'm doing, and I have it. And And also, it's, you know, episode 1 is good because if you get it right, you also, you know, people are quite happy to leave you on your own, you know, after that, you know, because they trust you, and that makes the streamlining, it makes the whole process much more streamlined and easy to deal with. If you are kind of left on your own, if people are nervous about you haven't got episode 1 right, but you get some of it right and some of it not quite right, you know, people start to get nervous, and then it gets more complicated, and then you start to doubt yourself, and you know, and the next thing you know, oh bugger, you know, it's kind of, you know,
everybody gets nervous.
Yeah, everybody gets nervous, and then, you know, so episode 1 is absolutely crucial. So I always ask for as much time as possible on that, but you know, I don't really have any, you know, real secrets about getting past that, you know, the blank page, you know, of having nothing to go on. And you know, I don't mind temp music at all. In fact, I quite often find it really useful because it gives me an idea of what it is, what the director's after. So in fact, temp music can be quite useful, but it's only useful up to a point. You know, you can't, I mean, sometimes I've done things that have, you know, temped with a Dark Knight, you know, and then, you know, some comedy show, and you know, and which is all very well, but you know, I've got to try and make those two things sound like they're part of one piece, you know. So but yeah, a temp is useful, I find. Yeah.
Right.
All right.
So I have another question here. Do you know about associations from composers in United Kingdom or in Europe? And if you have been to festivals about film score, if you have been some of these festivals.
Yeah, I've been to and performed and talked at quite a few now. I've been to, there's one in Cordoba, there's one in Krakow. I've been to Ghent several times. Where else? Oh yeah, Cologne, Amsterdam. Yeah, I've done most of them at some point. Or Prague as well. Prague was were a really good one. Yeah, I mean they're really interesting, and also it's, you know, because we're never working on the same job, composers hardly ever get to meet.
Yes,
it's quite a good way of bringing us all together and having a good moan about the, you know, about.
You're always in the dark room with the computer, the piano,
you know,
right?
I mean, some people think it's a really glamorous job, but you know, I've been in my studio basement, you know, for the last 20 years and barely surfaced.
Yeah.
You know,
you almost don't see the light of the sun.
No, I don't know. Yeah, so you know, that in a way that's why I do them, because it's good to get out and you know, and meet other people, and
yeah. And
yeah.
About associations, do you know?
Don't do associations so much. I mean, there are a few associations in Britain, and we do quite a lot of stuff online, but we don't do much sort of physically
okay.
Together.
Right.
And it's more, quite often they're more you know, places you go to, you know, if you're having a contractual problem or something like that, you know, they're quite good at being able to, but I haven't really had to do anything like that. So I haven't had that much involvement with associations here.
Okay.
But no.
Okay.
Some question more, Alex?
No, yeah, and they're telling me that we need to wrap it up. Unfortunately, we're on time, and we could be the whole day with you here, John.
Oh, I mean, it would be a pleasure. Yeah.
Could you? You are able? Are you able?
Hopefully you come here to Brazil.
I'd love to. I'd love to. My daughter went there 4 or 5 years ago. I was
really?
I was so jealous. Yeah. Well, one of her friends, her father's Brazilian. So she went with, and her mother, the girl's mother was English, but they were really good friends. So the two of them went out to Rio de Janeiro for a couple of weeks. Yeah,
I'm here in Rio.
Here in Rio. Yep.
Yeah. So you need to come.
I do need to go. I do. I've never been to South America. It's terrible. It's the only part of the world I've never really been. So I'm gonna. I will.
It's time.
And I'll tell you all when I'm coming.
Please.
You need to salute this.
So, well, listen. Well, thank you so much for having me. It was a pleasure talking to you all, and I'll definitely tune in tonight at 8 p.m. Brazilian time.
Nice. Thanks for accept to participate in this talk. Thanks for the good things that you share with us, and I wish that see you again in another festival.
Absolutely, Joe. Yeah. Thank you very much, and thank you, Alex. Thanks.
Yeah,
okay.
It was amazing. It was amazing to hear you talk, to hear your music. We are a big admirer of your work.
Thank you. That's very kind of you.
And I would like to thank also Marcos Souza, the president of Musimagem, Santa Marcelina University, Renan, that helped us with the transmission, Marta and Ricardo, that helped us with the translation, and of course, the audience that stayed with us at this moment. So thank you once again, John.
Thank you.
João.
Thanks.
Right. Okay.
Thanks, Alex.
Take care.
See you
Bye
soon.
bye.
Bye.
Bye-bye.